Everybody, welcome back to this special edition of Carry On Friends, the Caribbean American podcast. Yes, I've taken a break for the last couple months, but this is breaking worthy. And I have my good friend, Breadfruit Media partner, collaborator, Alexandria of the Strictly Facts podcast on to discuss the series Black Cake. I've listened to the book and I've watched the series. Alexandria has only watched the series, so we're going to get her feedback. So, Alexandria, welcome back to Carry On Friends.
Thank you. It feels like I never left. We're always listening and podcasting together. So I'm glad to be over on this side of things again.
Awesome. All right, so let's kick it off because this is not going to be a long episode because we're not extending the break from the break too long. So, so let's start off with what were your impressions of the series?
So yeah, I think first and foremost, it's always wonderful for me to see our stories come to life and be on the big screen or small screen in any shape and form, right? It's oftentimes where we've played the smaller characters, not the major characters. And I think one of the beauties of Black Cake was, although I haven't read the novel yet, it is on my to-do list for Christmas break. Um, it was wonderful to know that, in creating this series, it was obviously inspired by the book and being able to really showcase our stories in a way that felt natural to us. There are things that I thought I really enjoyed about it. The fact that, a lot of times when you see our stories, it's supposed to be based in Kingston, right? Oftentimes. And it was nice for me to watch a series or something about Jamaica and it not be centered in Kingston. Although obviously, there are travels abroad, so it's UK and the US, but I thought it was a nice part of the story for it to be showcased partially in Portland as well. There were, some smaller things that I wasn't necessarily a super fan of. I think every time we talk about Caribbean media, rather, we are always concerned with the accents, right? And trying to ensure, whether the twang was twanging or whether whether it was not, is sometimes an issue and can be, I think, difficult and challenging and something that I don't think we've fully figured out to how to do in terms of Caribbean media. But I thought the story was beautiful. I thought being able to showcase ourselves, especially on a platform as big as Hulu, was something that I really enjoyed being able to take part in watching.
I love that you said that because initial conversations were around the accent, and I've come up with a system that I have to test Black Cake against, right? But on an episode of Style and Vibes, I said accent is a spectrum, right?
Right.
And there are different types of accent, right? So Alexandria, you are Jamaican, Jamaican American, or your parents are Jamaican. Me call you Jamaican American. Your accent is going to be very different from mine when you go into patois, right?
Right.
It doesn't make you less Jamaican. So you talked about what they did well. I too love, us country girls, even though I always say Mobe is the second city, but us country girls, as everybody outside of everybody in Kingston calls us, it's always good to see that stories aren't centered in Kingston. Um, the location, I felt like when I read the book and I thought of the cove and I
I
thought
could see
of
it.
that's exactly what I envision. I envision Frenchman's Cove or maybe a Blue
Hmm.
Lagoon type situation.
Hmm.
I thought location scouting was on point. Um, Even the church, and I'm sure they picked multiple locations just to get that feel because we already know. Um, I liked how they did the shop, like Covey's father's shop, literally
Hmm.
reminded me of the shop next door when I was growing up, or the one up the street, across the road. Like how those doors of the shops are. Again, maybe this is
Yeah.
not a kid's, but the doors. So there were a lot of things that felt very nostalgic for me, and that I liked about it. My favorite episodes are episodes 1 and 2 because I
Mhm.
felt for me personally, they kept true to that very Caribbean Jamaican
True.
tradition. Once they left Jamaica or the Caribbean, whole different story. So it's not about me, it's about you. So you talked about what they did well. the casting, you said the accent was livable, and just seeing yourself. What could they have done better?
Hmm. I mean, I really did enjoy it. I think I had several friends of mine who are not of Jamaican ancestry or background, or actually not even of Caribbean ancestry. And, we had several conversations about their perceptions of the show. And I think, well, this is not to answer the question, but I do think another thing that it did well is that while somebody might not be of Caribbean background or ancestry, they are able to not only grasp the storyline, but in a way that's not ostracizing, right? So for us as Jamaican people, we're like, yes, it feels like the shop, it feels like the church, it feels like Blue Lagoon. But I think for those who are not of the same background, lineage, heritage, I think I really thought a beautiful eye into our culture in a sense, that allowed those who are not from that background to really get a good representation of who we are, of parts that are not, the bad man and, necessarily the different, I guess, stereotypical ways that we've been presented in media. In terms of things that it would like, I have to sit with that one a little bit. I think um I do think I would have potentially liked to see I think it started to get there in terms of, talking about Cubby's challenges when she got to the UK in particular, and I think it did a great job of sort of illuminating, living experiences, obviously racial dynamics and things to of that nature. I think to me, the historian in me, for anybody who follows Strictly Facts podcast knows I'm always trying to line up history, and chronological lines, etc. I maybe would have wanted to see it delve a little bit more into that time period and maybe make certain notes to what was going on in the greater sense. There's that scene, where um, Covey sees Byron, and now they're like, he was during a protest.
Covey sees Bert or
Birds,
Gibbs,
there we
Gibbs,
go.
now Bert. And
Gibbs,
that protest could have been anything that was happening in the
right,
UK at the time. It didn't
at the
speak to
time,
it. But I get
right.
that. A couple days ago, I was doing Friendsmas with my friends, because Friendsgiving didn't happen. And so there were four of us, and so the one friend and I, who we grew up in Jamaica, was just like, "Say you like Black Cake," and she's like, "Yeah, I've been meaning to watch Black Cake," and I was like, "Yeah, and she was like, "So what is it about?" Like, it's based on Jamaica. They're like, "What?" They had no idea that the
Mm,
Black Cake was
is
talking about like us. They had no idea. They literally thought it was a black Southern thing. And
mm,
they said that in the media, social media they followed, they were just like, it was, they didn't see it mentioned. And I think they just thought it was just like, oh, it's just a
a new
black
Black
American
series.
stories, yeah, and that was it. And so that tells me that there wasn't a connection to a wider Caribbean American audience. Like, I know a lot of people who've heard about it, but they have not committed to watch it. It's not until I say, "Oh, the story is based on a Caribbean island, but it's really Jamaican," and they're like, "Really?" Like, they had no idea. And
Mm,
I think in the marketing and the publicity of the series, I don't I don't know, more could have been done. Like, when you market to different audiences, I think more of an effort to market to this group of people would have been helpful,
definitely.
because a lot of, like, I had at least two people who were like surprised. They were like, "Now I'm going to watch it. I thought I could wait to watch it." They were just like, "Now I want to watch it." They had no
Mm,
idea. They thought Black Cake was something else. They were not thinking it was the Black Cake in front of us that we were eating at Friendsmas,
mm,
at all. And I think one of the reasons why they didn't put it together, they were like, "Oh, it's on Hulu and Oprah is producing it." And this is why it's important to me that it's represented. So, like, the Caribbeanness and the culture. And one of my favorite characters on TV right now is Shirley Ralph's character in Abbott Elementary, because she goes in and out of, like, you know, she's Caribbean and Jamaican, but like, you know, when it comes out, but she's authentically herself. And most Caribbean people, that's how they are. They'll be fine, but the minute you draw them out, the accent comes out, which is most
Mhm.
of us, right? And so, you know, there's very subtle ways to represent Caribbean American characters on TV that's authentic. And Shirley Ralph is able to do that because she is Caribbean American. She is Jamaican American, and she knows how to do that. So going back, my friends didn't equate that because they were like, "Oh my God, it's on Hulu and Oprah's producing it." They weren't making that connection that this could be about us because Oprah's producing it and it's on Hulu. They did
Mhm.
not make that
And
connection.
And I guess to add to that point, the inaccessibility of Hulu in the region. So if you're in Jamaica wanting to watch Black Cake, you have to go stream it some other way, not directly on Hulu.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I will say it was interesting for me to watch the children's stories and see that and try to figure out how they identified with their Caribbean Americanness, right? With their Jamaican Americanness being first generation born. So there were certain things that I definitely, you know, could recognize in my own upbringing, right? The fact that, you know, our parents want us to steer towards certain career tracks and things
Y-
to that nature, definitely. But there were other ways that I was like, I wish they could have played up on that a little bit more as well.
Exactly. So, I watched the Washington Post interview, and it appears that there might be a season two. What would
I
you
did
look
hear that
forward?
as well.
What would they do with a season two? I'm curious because I'm just like, I don't know where they're gonna go with what they're gonna pull out of a season two. So, what do you think they could do with a season two?
I mean, I was obviously we don't get the Byron and Betty's half sister story till towards the end of the series, right? I was really engaged in wanting to know what her final voice recording was. I think to me that was really, I mean, in a like in the grand scheme of things, the voice notes, if that was my own mom, I would feel that way, rightfully so, right? There's a way that I think secrets and generational traumas carry over
But
without
that's a
us
very
wanting to.
Caribbean thing. It's a
No,
very
it worked. It was true. Not that I would necessarily be happy about it. So I get that. But I think for me, I was really invested in, you know, we got, what was it, 8 voice notes or something, or 8 episodes, how many ever voice notes. I was really also wanting to know what her separate voice note was saying in terms of that storyline, because obviously it's inferred who her father is, right? It's not from, you know, the we don't get the same eagle eye version of that story that we got from the previous episode. So I think that might be the concentration of season 2.
Yeah, and Georgie said that. I don't like if they focus on that, but
Mhm.
overall, my position on this, like, I feel very strongly about the audiobook. I recommend people read it. I
Mm,
love books, period. I especially love books that represent the Caribbean American experience, the Caribbean global immigrant experience.
right.
And my role, or as part of Carry On Friends, is there is a space to support um Black Cake and the book and the series, but also a space to critique it. Because in the process of critiquing it, I think we signal to creators like, oh, maybe we need to consider other things, right? I don't know,
Mm,
you know, because they have to hear from the audience. You can support a thing and give a space to critique it as well, to say, well,
right.
here are certain things
Definitely.
that could have been better. Um, I just felt like there was a missed opportunity to incorporate the Caribbean audience, as evident by the number of people that I'd spoken to who had
Mhm.
no clue it was about that. So I'm looking forward to more representation of Caribbean, diverse representation outside of being the gunman, the ganja smoking Rasta,
Right.
and the nanny. I'm looking forward to more representation, more conversations about how we show up in media and the different ways that we show up in media. So I'm really excited. And always, Alexandria, it's always good to chat to you. I mean, this was really supposed to be a quick conversation and it's gone on long already. So, any final words on Black Cake?
I mean, I definitely recommend it to anybody. Just, I think it's that time of year where we're all looking for something nice to watch, especially with family. I'm not with my mom yet. I will be for the Christmas holiday, and she said she'll wait and watch it with me. I tried to get her to watch it now, and she was like, "I can't figure out how this Hulu thing work." So that's what we'll be watching for the holidays. But I recommend it to all people, whether you're of Caribbean background or not. But it definitely was a nice representation and a varied representation from what we usually see in terms of Jamaican people on the screen.
Yeah. Um, so my friend here bakes amazing black cakes. So my
Mhm.
mom ordered her black cake because she got one for her birthday. And then she's like, I want my Christmas cake. Got her black cake. Show me a picture of the cake. I said, oh, I'm going to take a little piece. I'm like, the minute she told me she's going to take a little piece, I knew what was going to happen.
Right.
Mid recording, she calls me. I'm like, I always going to take it because whenever my mom calls, I feel like, okay,
Oh.
you all right? Okay, all right, then I'll call you back. My mom was like, yeah, I couldn't stop eating. And so but that's like black cake, especially for us Jamaicans, right? Christmas there's nothing like
is
Christmas
that is the
in
time.
Jamaica.
It's
And
Christmas and it's weddings,
yes,
but it's
and
definitely Christmas.
right. And so her eating the black cake is memories of my
Mhm.
uncle baking the black cake, me licking the bowl,
Mhm.
like the fruits been soaking from the last
From
year,
right,
you know,
right.
the Christmas breeze, all these other things. So black cake is not just a piece of food. It really encapsulates memories and traditions. And I am hopeful that we get to continue or start a tradition of diverse representation of Caribbean Americans and people largely of the Caribbean diaspora on TV, streaming, film, wherever. So that's it for me. So until next time, walk good.